Diplomats delivered gripping testimony about President Trump's efforts to get Ukraine to investigate his potential 2020 rival, Joe Biden. Take a look.
Questions presented by this impeachment inquiry are whether President Trump sought to exploit that ally's vulnerability and invite Ukraine's interference in our elections, whether President Trump sought to condition official acts such as a White House meeting or U.S. military assistance on Ukraine's willingness to assist with two political investigations that would help his re-election campaign. And if President Trump did either, whether such an abuse of his power is compatible with the office of the presidency. The matter is as simple and as terrible as that. If we find that the President of the United States abused his power and invited foreign interference in our elections, or if he sought to condition, coerce, extort, or bribe an ally into conducting investigations to aid his re-election campaign and did so by withholding official acts, a White House meeting, or hundreds of millions of dollars of needed military aid, must we simply get over it?
The Democrats rejected most of the Republicans' witness requests, resulting in a horrifically one-sided process where the crucial witnesses are denied a platform if their testimony does not support the Democrats' absurd accusations. At a prior hearing, Democrats on this committee read out a purely fictitious rendition of the president's phone call with President Zelensky. They clearly found the real conversation to be insufficient for their impeachment narrative, so they just made up a new one. And most egregiously, the staff of the Democrats on this committee had direct discussions with the whistleblower before his or her complaint was submitted to the Inspector General. Republicans can't get a full account of these contacts because Democrats broke their promise to have the whistleblower testify to this committee.
William Taylor, the acting U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, and George Kent, a top U.S. diplomat, testified to Congress about what they say occurred between Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and President Trump. Democrats are accusing President Trump of abusing his power by using U.S. military assistance and a possible White House meeting to pressure President Zelensky into opening a probe into the Democrat Biden and his son Hunter, who served on the board of Ukrainian gas company Burisma.
Ambassador Sondland called President Trump and told him of his meetings in Kyiv. The member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations. Ambassador Sondland told President Trump the Ukrainians were ready to move forward. Following the call with President Trump, the member of my staff asked Ambassador Sondland what President Trump thought about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland responded that President Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden, which Giuliani was pressing for. By mid-July, it was becoming clear to me that the meeting President Zelensky wanted was conditioned on the investigations of Burisma and alleged Ukrainian interference in the 2016 U.S. elections. It was also clear that this condition was driven by the irregular policy channel I had come to understand was guided by Mr. Giuliani.
In mid-August, it became clear to me that Giuliani's efforts to gin up politically motivated investigations were now infecting U.S. engagement with Ukraine, leveraging President Zelensky's desire for a White House meeting.
A formal U.S. request to the Ukrainians.
Ambassador Taylor also said President Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, implemented an irregular policy channel that undermined U.S. relations with Ukraine while seeking to help the president politically.
A formal U.S. request to the Ukrainians to conduct an investigation based on violations of their own law struck me as improper, and I recommended to Ambassador Volker that we stay clear. But the odd push to make President Zelensky publicly commit to investigations of Burisma and alleged interference in the 2016 election showed how the official foreign policy of the United States was undercut by the irregular efforts led by Mr. Giuliani. On August 27th, Ambassador Bolton arrived in Kyiv and met with President Zelensky. During their meeting, security assistance was not discussed. As far as I knew, the Ukrainians were not aware of the hold until August 29th. I, on the other hand, was all too aware of and still troubled by the hold. Near the end of Ambassador Bolton's visit, I asked to meet him privately, during which I expressed to him my serious concern about the withholding of military assistance to Ukraine while the Ukrainians were defending their country from Russian aggression.
We're supposed to take these people at face value when they trot out a new batch of allegations. But anyone familiar with the Democrats' scorched earth war against President Trump would not be surprised to see all the typical signs that this is a carefully orchestrated media smear campaign.
The portrait that I think their testimony paints is one of an irregular channel that ran from the president through Mick Mulvaney, Ambassador Sondland, Ambassador Volker, on down to Rudy Giuliani, in which the president sought to advance his political and personal interests at the expense of United States national security. And the president did that by pressing this vulnerable ally to get involved in the next presidential election in a way that the president thought would advance his re-election prospects. Did so by inviting Zelensky to do these political investigations, and more than that, did so by conditioning a White House meeting as well as ultimately hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid needed by this ally.
I think what should happen is the whistleblower should testify. All we asked for today with our motion.
This was Adam Schiff's first opportunity in front of the public. These hearings have been conducted in a basement bunker, part of his regime of secrecy, and this was an abject failure for the Democrats and for Adam Schiff. Number one, he still refuses to hear from the whistleblower, which started off this whole process. Number two, in less than 20 minutes, Adam Schiff interrupted Republicans' questions. So we want to make sure that all members are able to ask questions. That includes Republican members. This is a continuation of his conduct in closed-door meetings. The key facts here are as follows. One, Ukraine got the aid. Two, there was no investigation into the Bidens. Those facts speak for themselves, and I'm proud of our members for making sure that those facts were clear for the American public.
Now, when asked about the new allegations while hosting his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan at the White House, this is what President Trump said.
That he did speak to me for a brief moment, and I said no quid pro quo under any circumstances, and that's true. The other, I've never heard this. In any event, it's more second-hand information, but I've never heard it.
Do you recall having a conversation with?
I don't recall. No, not at all. Not even a little bit. The only thing, and I guess Sondland had stayed with his testimony, that there was no quid pro quo.
That a businessman would acquire something. That person owns.
In other news, outgoing EU Council President Donald Tusk warned Britain will be a second-rate player after Brexit, unable to compete with big powers like the US, China, and EU. Now, some Brexit backers have argued that leaving the EU, the world's largest trading bloc, will enable Britain to forge closer economic ties with other countries around the world. Let's listen in.
I have heard repeatedly from Brexiteers that they wanted to leave the European Union to make the United Kingdom global again, believing that only alone it can truly be great. You could hear in these voices a longing for the empire, but the reality is exactly the opposite. Only as part of a united Europe can the UK play a global role. Only together can we confront, without any complexes, the greatest powers of this world. In fact, I can say the same about Germany or France. And the world knows it. I have heard the same in India, New Zealand, Australia, Canada and South Africa, that after its departure, the UK will become an outsider, a second-rate player, while the main battlefield will be occupied by China, the United States, and the European Union. Why are they doing this? I was asked this regretful question everywhere I went. One of my English friends is probably right when he says with melancholy that Brexit is the real end of the British Empire.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson is fighting the December 12 election on a pledge to get Brexit done after failing in a pledge to get Britain out on October 31st. The new departure date is January 31st, but the main opposition Labour Party is pledging to renegotiate the divorce deal and put it to a second referendum, while the Liberal Democrats have vowed to scrap Brexit altogether. Now, Mr. Tusk, who leaves the office at the end of the month, has made no secret of his opposition to Brexit. Take a look.
The UK election takes place in 1 month. Can things still be turned around? Hannah Arendt taught that things become irreversible only when people start to think so. So the only words that come to my mind today are simply, don't give up. In this match, we had added time, now we are in extra time. Perhaps it will even go to penalties.
Now, Mr. Tusk also said he envied former Commons Speaker John Bercow because he can finally honestly say what he thinks about Brexit. Referencing Mr. Bercow, who described Brexit as the biggest foreign policy mistake in the post-war period, Mr. Tusk said this. Let's listen in.
Finally, if you allow me, I want to tell you something I wouldn't have dared to say a few months ago, as I could be fired for being too frank. And today it is simply too late to impeach Donald, at least the European one. In fact, I envy John Bercow that he can finally honestly say what he thinks about Brexit.
In other news, dirty water is now swirling around marble tombs inside the 12th century crypt of St. Mark's Basilica in Venice, which suffered untold damage when an unprecedented high tide swept through the city. Take a look. Now, pumps are working overtime to clear the seawater from around the altar and under the pink and white stone arches as the historic monument's custodians look on in sadness and anger. The exceptionally intense Aqua Alta, or high water, peaked at 1.87 meters or 6 feet late Tuesday, forcing stranded tourists to wade through rapidly rising waters in the dark in search of safety as the flood alarm rang out. Only once since records began in 1923 has the water crept even higher, reaching 1.94 meters in 1966. Sewage and drowned rats could be seen floating in the city's pungent alleyways. Now, to protect Venice from Aqua Alta or high tides, when the sea level in the Adriatic rises and water pours into the historic city, work began back in 2003 on a major flood barrier project. The plan features a series of 78 mobile barriers in 4 sections at the 3 inlets to Venice Lagoon at Malamocco, Chioggia, and the Lido. The Lido is the biggest challenge. It's divided into 2 sections linked by an artificial island. The barriers are in effect giant steel gates 27 meters long and bolted to the seafloor. When the tide level rises above 1.10 meters, it triggers a process by which compressed air is pumped into each hollow gate. The gates rise to a near vertical position in 4 to 5 hours, forming a barrier to protect the lagoon. Once the tide ebbs and the danger of flooding is past, water is pumped in and the gates return to a horizontal position. The death toll from devastating bushfires in eastern Australia has risen to 4 after a man's body was discovered in a scorched area of bushland, according to police. Take a look. 3 others have perished in bushfires in New South Wales, the state worst affected by a series of catastrophic fires that broke out along the eastern seaboard late last week. Residents found the body believed to be a 58-year-old man last seen on Friday near the New South Wales town of Kempsey, one of several areas hit by the fires in recent days. More than 100 blazes were burning on Thursday, but a respite from tough conditions has seen the danger from many fires downgraded and residents returning to sift through the remains of their homes. Challenging conditions were expected to flare again in Queensland and New South Wales at the weekend as the temperature rises and winds pick up, and many blazes are still proving difficult to contain. Hundreds of houses have already been damaged or destroyed, and more than 1 million hectares of land burned in the blazes.
Hard to look at it like this, knowing how it was yesterday morning. Yep. And like, that was the thing, I came out here after having an argument with everyone that I was coming out here anyhow, so yeah.
And as Australia's catastrophic and deadly wildfire emergency continues, UN weather experts echoed government warnings for people to remain vigilant in the face of tinderbox conditions. Let's listen in.
Apart from the immediate physical threat, and when authorities issue of a catastrophic fire danger, the message there is basically get out, get away. According to the Bureau of Meteorology of Australia, it's been the second warmest January to October on record for Australia as a whole, and these are records going back 110 years. The current fires are due to a combination of factors, including low soil moisture, heat, and importantly, wind direction and wind speed. The most extreme 10% of fire weather days, which is how they measure the fire index, has increased in recent decades across many regions of Australia, especially in southern and eastern Australia. There has been an associated increase in the length of the fire weather season, and climate change, including increasing temperatures, is contributing to these changes.
Several areas in Luzon and Visayas are now under tropical cyclone wind signal number 1 and 2, as tropical storm Ramon maintains its strength, according to Pagasa. Ramon was last eyed 500 kilometers east of Baler, Aurora, heading north-northwest at 15 kilometers per hour. It has maximum sustained winds of 65 kilometers near the center and gustiness of up to 80 kilometers per hour, according to Pagasa. Signal number 2 was raised over Catanduanes, while the eastern portion of Isabela, Divilacan, Palanan, Dinapigue, Northern Aurora, Dilasag, Casiguran, Dilangunan, Polillo Island, Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, and Albay were put under signal number 2. Light to moderate with occasional heavy rains may be experienced over the eastern portion of Cagayan and Isabela, and light to moderate with intermittent heavy rains will prevail over northern Aurora, Camarines Norte, and Polillo Island, likely until Friday. On Saturday, Pagasa forecasts light to moderate to occasionally heavy rains over Cagayan, northern Aurora, and the eastern portion of Isabela. Light to moderate with intermittent heavy rains may also be experienced over Apayao and the rest of Isabela and Aurora. Sea travel is risky, according to Pag-asa, especially for small sea crafts over the seaboards of areas under the typhoon signal. Now, this includes the seaboard of northern Luzon and the eastern seaboards of Aurora and Quezon due to prevailing or forecast rough sea conditions. In other news, with wooden catapults to launch petrol bombs and bows and arrows pilfered from sport departments, Hong Kong's democracy protesters are combining new tactics with medieval tech as they battle police. Take a look. Now, roads in the financial hub have been blockaded with bamboo lattices this week, while many Stonehenge-like structures have been built from dug-up pavement as the southern Chinese city lurches deeper into crisis. Universities have become the epicenter of battle, with students joined by other black-clad braves of the frontline protest movement saying they have been pressed into the defense of their campuses by police threats. As a rolling strike cripples the transport system of the famously frenetic city and fuels already intense clashes with police, hardcore protesters have bolstered their arsenal of Molotovs and bricks with an unlikely array of weapons. And hose include sports gear, javelins, and bows and arrows lifted from university storerooms, as well as tennis rackets to bat away tear gas canisters. Chairs and mattresses have also been pulled from college dorms for use as barricades or shields against increasingly heavy barrages of police rubber bullets. The campus faces the Cross Harbor Tunnel, a key route between the Kowloon Peninsula, which is connected by land to the Chinese mainland, and the finance center of Hong Kong Island. Protesters also closed the link late Wednesday and had rolled a catapult into view of the tunnel in case police tried to breach the barricade. Police accused the protesters of turning the Chinese University of Hong Kong, one of the city's most prestigious campuses, in the scene of running battles on Tuesday night, into a weapons factory. In other news, in an effort to accelerate the response to the increasing humanitarian needs of Venezuelan refugees and migrants and the communities hosting them, UN partners launched an appeal for $1.35 billion. The UN Refugee Agency and International Organization for Migration, or IOM, announced the 2020 Regional Refugee and Migrant Response Plan in the Colombian capital, Bogota, alongside 137 other organizations. Around 4.6 million Venezuelans have now fled their home country, with nearly 80% taking refuge in Latin America and the Caribbean, mostly in neighboring Colombia. If the trend continues, 6.5 million Venezuelans could become refugees by the end of next year, according to the UN. Israel's military said Thursday that an overnight strike in Gaza that Palestinian officials say left 8 members of the same family dead killed an Islamic Jihad commander. Israeli army spokesman Avichai Adrei said Rasmi Abu Malus was killed in a raid in the Gaza Strip's Deir al-Bala before a ceasefire took hold on Thursday morning. Adrei alleged on Twitter he was a commander of a rocket unit. The Gaza Health Ministry earlier said 8 members of the Abu Malus family, including 5 children, were killed in an Israeli strike on their family home. Residents and relatives disputed that he was affiliated with Islamic Jihad, saying he had been a military police officer for the Palestinian Authority. Shortly after the attack on Tuesday morning that killed Baha Abu al-Atta and his wife, salvos of rockets were launched from Palestinian groups in the besieged Gaza Strip into Israel. Now, in response to the rocket barrage, Israel launched dozens of air raids on Gaza. So far, 32 Palestinians have been killed in the bombardment, according to health officials and medics. In other news, China on Thursday completed a test of its Mars exploration lander ahead of Beijing's first mission to the Red Planet slated for 2020. Beijing is pouring billions into its military-run space program with hopes of having a crewed space station by 2022. Take a look. Thursday's hovering and obstacle avoidance test, which took place in Hualai, northern Hebei province, was conducted in a facility that simulated conditions on Mars. China's pushing to catch up with the United States and become a space power, with ambitions of a manned lunar landing. Earlier this year, it made the first ever soft landing on the far side of the moon, deploying a rover on the surface. The U.S., however, has banned most space cooperation with China out of national security concerns, keeping China from participating in the International Space Station. Now, despite that, China's ambitions continue to grow as it seeks to rival the U.S., Russia, and Europe in space and cement its position as a regional and global power. It is gradually constructing its own larger, more permanent space station in which it has invited foreign participation. You're watching Eagle News. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Mga kababayan, lalo na sa mga OFWs sa Middle East at North Africa, may good news kami para sa inyo. Mapapanood na ninyo ang Net25 at iba pang Filipino channels na hatid ng OSN sa presyong abot kaya. Libre ng box at installation, walang admin fees at no extra charges. Saktong entertainment na sakto lang sa budget mo. Bumisita na sa pinakamalapit na OSN store o dealer and subscribe now! Sa Net25 at OSN, siguradong at home ka dito.
Welcome back. Malacanang on Thursday said it would look into the imposition of 4-day work week scheme during the holiday season, a proposal seen as a solution to the traffic congestion. Presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo said in a text message to reporters, he said, "We will evaluate all recommendations coming from any department or agency desiring to recommend." On Wednesday, House Minority Leader Benny Abante Jr. sought the implementation of 4-day work week during the holiday season among private firms and non-frontline government agencies situated along EDSA, the country's busiest highway. Abante made the proposal as he anticipated heavy traffic during the holiday season. Abante also urged private companies to maximize Republic Act 11165 or the Telecommuting Act, a law that allows employees to work from the comforts of their homes. The House leader also appealed to Malacanang to consider his recommendation for non-frontline government offices located along EDSA, like the Bureau of Internal Revenue, Social Security System, and the Philippine Overseas Employment and Administration. He noted that the proposed work arrangement would lead to 40% boost in productivity based on the outcome of the technology giant Microsoft's implementation in one of its subsidiaries in Japan. Uncertainties on U.S.-China trade talks spooked investors anew. Now that resulted in the negative close of the Philippine Stock Exchange Index and the weakening of the peso. The main equities index shed 0.81% or 64.87 points to 7,947.47 points. The BPI research attributed the decline to mixed signals on the path of U.S. and China's trade discussions. This after U.S. President Donald Trump indicated that they are near in signing a deal but warning of repercussions if an agreement will not materialize. Almost all the counters in the local equities market ended on the negative, with all shares down by 0.52% or 24.73 points to 4,763.89 points. In other business news, Daimler said it planned to cut jobs to save more than 1 billion euros or $1.1 billion by the end of 2022 as the German luxury car maker grapples with an expensive switch to greener vehicles. The Mercedes-Benz maker has also been hit by expensive recalls, a slowing global market, and an 870 million euro fine for having sold vehicles that didn't conform with legal emissions limits. By the end of 2022, Mercedes-Benz Cars plans to save more than 1 billion euros in personal costs. To this end, jobs are to be reduced, according to the company in a statement. The statement didn't say how many jobs would be slashed overall in the cars division. Mercedes-Benz Cars Vans employs around 175,000 people worldwide, but they're expected to be in management and administrative roles. Now, following the announcement that Chinese industrial giant Xingye Group has agreed to buy British steel, workers at Scunthorpe Steelworks and the local Labour candidate expressed relief. Take a look.
This is good news for steel workers and their families locally. It's good news for our steel community, and it's generally speaking a very positive day for everybody. But there's still a job to do in completing this deal. So it's important that Xingye sit down and work things through with the trade unions and other regulatory matters so that we can move on in a positive way.
Chinese industrial giant Xingye Group has agreed to buy bankrupt British Steel for an undisclosed amount. The official receiver said Monday in a rescue deal that saves thousands of jobs. Xingye added separately that it would invest £1.2 billion or $1.5 billion over the next decade to place the business, which collapsed in May, on a competitive and sustainable footing. Some 5,000 people are employed by British Steel, which had collapsed into liquidation in May, while another 20,000 jobs have links to its supply chain. A total of 4,000 British Steel staff work in the UK, with an additional 1,000 based in France and the Netherlands. Xingye added that the deal will save thousands of jobs in Britain, as the pair will together form a global giant. The European Steel Association has urged the EU to help the bloc's struggling sector, which it said has been swamped by cheap steel from Asia since the US imposed import tariffs in 2018. In other news, Kay Wilson has just moved to Los Angeles, in the city of her dreams, and considers herself lucky. The 26-year-old hairdresser has found a place to live at the same price as the studio she used to rent in Pennsylvania. The only problem is that the young woman sleeps inside a pod no bigger than 3 square meters. Her new home is a capsule. It's inspired by the famous hotels in Japan. Take a look.
This is my pod. Yeah, this is where I sleep and pretty much have my entire life, all in this little box. It's like literally everything I need to be a new person in a new city like LA, where, you know, there's a lot going on. So I decided to just give up my privacy. I sold all my belongings, and I moved here to be in this pod.
The idea is, you know, we always want to be about half the price of a studio apartment. So it's about $750 a month. That includes a place to live, all the amenities, all the activities, all the classes, and the tacos.
You know, that shit was never given to me. That's just a fallacy told by the enemy trying to get ahead of me. They did him. Everybody.
We have so few housing alternatives available. If you have a limited amount of income for rent, which is supposed to be 30% of your earnings. That's the equation we always used. Let's say you make, you know, $60,000 a year. You get $5,000 a month. After taxes, you have $3,000. 30% of that is $1,000 a month. There's nothing for rent anywhere.
Eagle News, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
November 23, we are opening our doors to you for the ultimate ABC experience. Enjoy performances from your favorite OPM artists and meet our talented reporters, hosts, and DJs too. Experience hosting, reporting, camera handling, and more in our interactive booths. Visit exhibits of various products, innovative business solutions, and even job openings featured in our trade fair. For small and medium enterprises, learn tips and tricks at the Business Forum on entrepreneurship and technology. Also avail of fast and hassle-free services from our government agency partners such as the PSA, SSS, Pag-ibig, PhilHealth, and more. Admission is free, so bring the whole family, learn, dine, and experience the EBC Open House.
Now, as we said earlier, much of Venice was left underwater after the highest tide in 50 years ripped through the historic Italian city, beaching gondolas, trashed hotels, and sending tourists fleeing through rapidly rising waters. Now, the government in Rome was expected to declare a state of emergency at a cabinet meeting on Thursday after Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte described the flooding as a, quote, a blow to the heart of our country. Now, officials blamed climate change while shopkeepers on the Grand Canal raged against those who have failed to protect the UNESCO city from the high tide. They said corruption had repeatedly delayed a barrier protection system that could have prevented the disaster. The city is on its knees, according to Venice Mayor Luigi Brugnaro in an interview with national broadcaster RAI. The state of emergency for a natural disaster will allow the government to use exceptional powers and means to intervene more quickly, and Conte said his government was ready to allocate funds. Venice is bracing itself for more rising waters on Thursday. Venetians awoke to sirens indicating that the high waters were expected to exceed 130 centimeters or 50 inches, enough to bring the salty, dirty water back again into the UNESCO city's historic center. On Tuesday, the highest tide in 50 years ripped through the historic Italian city, peaking at 6 feet. Climate change will damage the health of an entire generation unless there are immediate cuts to fossil fuel emissions, from a rise in deadly infectious diseases to surging malnutrition, according to experts. Now, children across the world were already suffering the ill effects of air pollution and extreme weather events, said the Lancet Countdown in its annual report on the impact of climate change on human health. And far worse is to come for future generations, it warned. Airborne diseases, malnutrition due to mass crop failures, and even mental and physical trauma from increased flash flooding and wildfires. The Lancet Countdown is a coalition of 35 institutions, including the World Health Organization and the World Bank. Their warning comes as some of Australia's worst wildfires in living memory continue to burn across its eastern seaboard, and after a global youth strike inspired by Swedish schoolgirl Greta Thunberg. August was the hottest month ever recorded, and Earth was already warmed 1 degree Celsius or 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit since industrialization. Authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo on Thursday introduced a second vaccine to fight the deadly Ebola virus in the east of the country, according to the Doctors Without Borders charity. It said the new vaccine, produced by a Belgian subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, is aimed at protecting about 50,000 people over a period of 4 months. More than 250,000 people in the region have already been receiving doses of another anti-Ebola vaccine since last year. Democratic Republic of the Congo declared an Ebola epidemic in August of 2018 in the conflict-racked eastern provinces of North Kivu, South Kivu, and Ituri, bordering Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. The highly contagious hemorrhagic fever has so far killed 2,193 people, according to the latest official figures. Now, efforts to roll back the epidemic have been hampered not only by fighting, but also by resistance within communities to preventive measures, care facilities, and safe burials. It's a disease affecting 420 million people worldwide. The World Health Organization announced the start of a pilot program to pre-qualify human insulin to increase treatment for diabetes in low and middle-income countries.
Diabetes is a massive health issue and a big public health problem because of the sheer numbers of people with diabetes. There are over 400 million people that have diabetes in the world, and the burden has been rising rapidly in the last 30 years, particularly in low and middle income countries. Insulin is a hormone secreted by the pancreas and is crucial in the metabolism of carbohydrate, fat, and protein. Lack of insulin, for whatever reason, leads to complications that are deadly and often debilitating as well. So insulin, if there isn't enough of it produced by the body or it doesn't work properly, needs to be replaced by injections. There are many people who have diabetes and need insulin. People who have type 1 diabetes need it for survival. They will die without daily injections of insulin. And many people with type 2 diabetes, it is estimated that about 60 million of those people will need insulin to prevent complications.
WHO pre-qualification of insulin is expected to boost access by increasing the flow of quality-assured products on the international market, providing countries with greater choice and patients with lower prices. Despite an ample supply, insulin prices are currently a barrier to treatment in most low and middle-income countries. 3 manufacturers control most of the global market for insulin, setting prices that are prohibitive for many people and countries.
The problem with access to insulin, there are several problems. It is a complex protein molecule. It needs to be manufactured. It needs to be transported. It needs to be stored. And there is a price attached to it that is currently unaffordable to many people who need it.
Pre-qualifying insulin is very important because we need additional supplies of quality assured insulin that can be accessed by people who can't afford it at the moment. One of the reasons why insulin is so expensive is because there's only a limited number of companies that are actually commercializing it, and they have control over the price setting. If we bring new entrants into the market, we hope to expand the competition, and this will have an impact on prices and will mean that more patients, particularly in low and middle income countries, have access to the insulin that they need to survive. So pre-qualification has been shown to decrease price of products, particularly in the HIV area.
More than 420 million people live with diabetes. Diabetes is the 7th leading cause of death and a major cause of costly and debilitating complications such as heart attacks, stroke, kidney failure, blindness, and lower limb amputations. Insulin pre-qualification is one of a number of steps the WHO will take in the coming year to address the diabetes burden.
Once we started to pre-qualify, after 3 years, the price per person was $300 per year. That's really...
Let's now focus on sports. Here's Ben Bernaldez.
Philippine Sea Games Organizing Committee Chairman and House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano expressed hope that the Philippines will top this year's Southeast Asian Games, which the country is hosting.
Handang-handa na ang lahat para sa SEA Games. Humingi pa rin kami ng prayers at suporta ng lahat kasi syempre hindi mo naman ma-foresee lahat ng mga contingencies at pwedeng mangyari. Karoon kami ng board meeting bago nito at na-iron out yung mga 1, 2, or 3 items na kailangan pang ayusin. We're not, as the organizing committee, we're not making any predictions. So let POC do the predictions, but of course, nagdadasal kami, we're hoping and we're giving us support na mag-number 1 ang Pilipinas.
The Philippines clinched the overall championship with the biennial meet in 2005, the last time the country hosted the Games. With the Philippines hosting the SEA Games again from November 30 to December 11, clinching another overall title is not far-fetched. In fact, a 220 gold medal haul for the Philippine team was projected. Asked about his reaction to the forecast, Cayetano was mum about his own projection for the team.
I'd rather not as chairman, di ba? Kasi nga, we have to make sure fair sa lahat. So, POC na ang mag-make ng predictions.
Cayetano also answered other issues surrounding the hosting of the country in the 38th SEA Games.
Ginawa na rin ng MMDA yung recommendation. Sabi ni Chair Butch, well, una-una may contingency tayo. But sabi ni Chair Butch, kakayanin. So we're monitoring it week by week. So 17 days to go. But so far, nandyan assurances. Lumapit kanina yung gumagawa. 24 hours na daw sila gumagawa para matapos ang lumapit. But may contingency just in case may nangyari. Okay na, wala nang problema sa IT.
Yung traffic, kumusta po ba? Pag-declare po ba ng mga mali?
Well, MMDA nga submitted a list of certain areas. So hinihintay pa natin ang palasyo to sa kanilang decision. But may recommendation na ang MMDA.
More likely po mag-declare?
I think so in some areas kasi nga as it is traffic na masyado, lalo pa kung may excitement manood ang ating mga kababayan. And syempre isipin natin dito yung mga athletes, yung mga taga-ibang bansa, hindi sila pwedeng malate sa kanilang mga venue. No? But as much as possible, pinatira na natin sila sa mga hotels at dorms na malapit na sa venue. As siguro it was brief, no? 2-3 weeks ago, may mga nabalitaan na threat, but agad-agad nag-action ang security forces from the NSA, NICA, and si General Katapang, former Chief of Staff na Head of Security, assures us na in place yung mga
Meanwhile, for the first time, the Philippine Olympic Committee headed by Abraham Tolentino will also reward cash incentives to athletes who will bring home medals for the country.
The Philippine Olympic Committee, hindi pa po ito ginagawa ng POC sa SEA Games. Pipilitin po namin mga minamahal kong atleta, pipilitin po namin ng POC na makapagbigay din ng cash incentives tulad po ng gagawin ng PSC na naayon sa batas. Sa inyo po lahat, mabuhay po ang PSC, ang ating pong Philippine team.
And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez and I'm 1 with 25.
Let's go now to Hawaii. Our EBC correspondent Michael Hudson takes us through an experience you just might fall for. Let's dive on in.
How you doing, everybody? Michael with Eagle Sports here. I'm here at Upolu Airport in beautiful Big Island, Hawaii. Today, I'm going to be going skydiving. I want to take you guys on a journey with me because this is my first time, and I want to show you how fun and exciting this extreme sport is. Let's go check it out. If you didn't know so already, skydiving can be one of the most terrifying things you can do in your life. I mean, you're going up 10,000 feet in the air, jumping off a plane, and parachuting to the ground. So I went to one of the skydiving firms on the island called BIG Skydiving. I had the pleasure of jumping with Kwa and JR, who are the owners of the company, and they have over 5,000 jumps on their resume.
There's going to be one right here in this area, and then this is emergency.
Leading up to the jump, we sign waiver forms and are given specific instructions on how to jump, how to position our bodies, and also the equipment checks. Hey guys, so I'm all strapped up, went through the class, and now we're about to go jump. Let's do it. After skydiving for the first time, I was convinced that this activity is exhilarating, it's exciting, and it can be so much fun. I mean, you're up in the air peacefully, just looking around, beautiful sights around you, and it's something that
Narito na ang umaga pagkatapos ng
The Iglesia ni Cristo continues its Aid to Humanity events, and this time they went to Donna, Texas. Diane Pasion reports.
In South Texas, the border of Mexico, known as the Rio Grande Valley, is valued for its agriculture and warm climates. This region, however, also suffers a high poverty rate. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 29.5% of residents in Hidalgo County live in poverty. And in Donna, Texas, that rate climbs to 34.9%. But on this particular day, volunteers from all over Texas and surrounding states traveled hundreds of miles to lend a helping hand to residents in the Rio Grande Valley.
We're here today in the city of Donna, Texas, where the Iglesia ni Cristo has established an Aid to Humanity to help the local families who are in need.
On October 31st, the Iglesia ni Cristo, through its charitable arm, the Felix Y. Manalo or FYN Foundation, conducted an Aid to Humanity in Donna, Texas, a small city in the heart of the Rio Grande Valley. During the event, over 1,700 care packages containing food and household items were given to the city of Donna. Free medical screening and flu shots were provided to the community by volunteer medical practitioners. Clothes donated by the Iglesia ni Cristo members were also offered to families and individuals alike. Musical performances, a magic show and a bouncy castle provided entertainment for families and children. Volunteers also distributed hot meals and free refreshments to those who attended the event.
Volunteer for Aid for Humanity is such a blessing. I once was in there shooting needing groceries and something to wear, and people would volunteer and have these organizations and programs for us when I was out there at that time homeless and needed food and shelter. So it is a great privilege to come back and God, restore you, and you turn around and reach back and help.
The church has done Aid to Humanity activities all around the world. Our brethren in Edinburgh, we came out to the city for the past 3 weeks, and we were able to go to shopping centers. We went to assisted living facilities. We also went to City Hall to help promote the activity. And they told us, about certain areas here that are in need of basic necessities. And so when they heard about our Aid to Humanity project, they were elated and they were happy. And so they gave us the venue free of charge. And some of the city workers also helped promote the activity, especially for the city of Donna. The city of Donna is a low-income area. And so when they found out about this activity, they were excited. And so a lot of people came.
My name is Dominica Ortiz and I'm from the city of Alton, Texas.
How far is that from here?
It's about an hour.
And so how did you find out about this?
A friend of ours told us.
And tell us about this whole region.
We get paid minimum wage here, so especially during the city of Aldana, work is very slow right now. Everybody's struggling. So I was very thrilled to know that there was help. First, providing health care, getting screened for the glucose, the flu shot, because a lot of us don't have any medical benefits, and also providing for food for our home.
Like, who did you bring here with you today?
I brought my mom with me today and my sister-in-law, so it was a family function.
The noble purpose of this activity today, Aid to Humanity, is to help those who are in need, which is also connected to the book of Proverbs 3:27, wherein it says, when possibly can, do good to those who need it.
On behalf of the City of Donna, I, Gilbert Guerrero, would like to thank the Felix Milano Foundation for the activity in the city. Also, I would like to thank the executive ministry of your church Brother Eduardo Malaro for having these activities in our city. Thank you very much.
From what I saw today, the large turnout that came to the event, it was a huge impact to the community. They heard about it, they came out. It was people that needed the help, got it.
Through the years, hundreds of thousands have been helped by the Iglesia Ni Cristo through its socio-civic program.
I actually think it was very well organized. I was extremely impressed by the video, the way it was organized, especially putting Christ's name out there. I think is one of the most important things. I had never heard about your church, but I'm definitely going to go and research more information about your church. But we're so blessed to have you guys organize such a wonderful event to provide for the elders and for families who are low in income.
What joy I give from participating in this is the service for the Lord. He blessed us to be able to bless others.
I want to thank the people involved with Aid to Humanity for taking their time and their effort to come down to our city and helping our community in health, clothing, anything they can help us with. Of course, I'm very happy, I'm very honored to be here with you guys today, that you guys came to our city and you chose the city of Donna. Thank you very much, really, thank you, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Reporting from Donna, Texas, I'm Diane Pasion, your Eagle News correspondent. We are on with 2025.
Thank you, guys. And that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here at Eagle News, I'm Alma Angeles, always one with 25. Good night.